Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and we got 2 hours of open forum for you today. You're welcome to call with any question at all. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884, and I think it's going to be 2 very, very good hours because both hours have a good guest. Jimmy Akin here for 2 hours. Hi, Jimmy Akin.
Hello, Cy Kellett.
How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, you were wearing some groovy glasses there at the top of the show.
these are
There's
my
sunglasses with bright orange frames.
I know. I really like these frames. Is it a little much, though?
And they
do you
have
think?
iridescent lenses,
Well,
kind of like the eyes of a bug.
Yeah, a little bit, right. But I scratched them up. So, But yeah, thank you for mentioning my sunglasses. They don't get enough attention.
Yeah,
my iridescent
they
red
kind
sunglasses.
of scream out for attention.
They do. They do. Yes, that's right. Again, the number is 888-318-7884. You can ask whatever you like, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not. Your call is welcome here. 888-318-7884. Jimmy, of course, the author of a whole bunch of books, including The Bible is a Catholic Book. He's a longtime apologist here at Catholic Answers and the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. What drops tomorrow, Jimmy?
Tomorrow is, tomorrow is a Patrons Questions show, if I recall correctly.
All right, yeah.
And so our patrons get to ask us questions, sometimes pretty weird ones, and that's what we're doing. We also got a bunch of cool stuff coming up next month in November. We have a look first up at the canals of Mars.
Oh, yeah.
That were reported by astronomers in the 19th century and that led to speculation about a civilization on Mars. Then we have a look at what is the scientific evidence for life on Mars. And there's more than you might think. And then we're going to be looking at the most famous gentleman hijacker in U.S. history, D.B. Cooper.
Why do you say the most famous? Oh, because there were...
Because he was nice. To people. I mean, he was a hijacker, but he would pay for his drinks on the plane. He tipped the stewardesses when one of them made a joke after they got the ransom money, and she said, "Wow, that's a lot of money. Can I have some?" And she was joking, and he handed her a packet of $120 bills. So he just gave her $2,000 in 1971 dollars, and she quickly gave it back, explaining that we're not allowed to accept gratuities from hijackers.
Well, she could have kept it and given it back to whoever.
She didn't do that.
Yeah.
And then he got away. He leapt out of the plane in mid-flight and got away.
And he went back to
Asgard. Yeah.
888-318-7884. Andrew liked that little joke. He went back to Asgard. Andrew got it.
He had lost a bet with Thor.
He had lost a bet with Thor. 888-318-7884. I want to go to this call right away because we don't get many calls from El Cajon. And it's
that's
fun.
where we are.
We're in El Cajon. Maybe the call is coming from inside the building.
Uh-oh.
Let's go to John in El Cajon.
I know what you did last summer.
John, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi guys, actually I'm in East El Cajon. You guys are in West El Cajon. So.
Oh, hey, that's okay. We're not snooty about it. All right, just because we come from the fancy part of El Cajon.
You're closer to the beach, yeah.
Right.
So, Jimmy, for the past 15 years, I've returned to one of the essays you wrote on your website about dating before one gets an annulment, and I'd say it's been one of the best but most toughest essays I've ever read in my life. And every time I meet somebody who hasn't had their annulment yet, I go back and revisit your essay. So I have kind of a two-part question. It kind of depends on the first question. So the first question is, so you wrote that in 2006. To your knowledge, do you pretty much stand by all the ideas that you presented across in that article?
Well, I haven't gone back and reread it recently, but my general sense would be that under ordinary circumstances, it is not a good idea to be dating someone who needs an annulment and has not received one, because what you do when you start dating someone is you start building an emotional bond with them, and there is no guarantee that they will receive an annulment. And even if they apply for one, there is no guarantee they will receive one. And consequently, you're asking under ordinary circumstances, you're asking for trouble if you start dating a person and building a bond with them emotionally, because if it then turns out that they don't receive an annulment, you either are going to have a very painful decision to make, and so are they. They're likely to get hurt. You're likely to get hurt. And you can be tempted to violate Jesus's commandment regarding not committing adultery by civilly remarrying someone who is already married to someone else. So there's temptation for sexual sin there. There can be temptation to abandon the faith in order to alleviate the cognitive dissonance of the sexual sin. And best case scenario, you break up and it's painful for both people. So under ordinary circumstances, if someone needs an annulment, I recommend not dating them. Now, there can be exceptions to that, like if you know for a fact the person's going to get an annulment because it's a lack of form situation, and all that's involved in getting the annulment is filing certain paperwork to show that the person was a Catholic and they didn't get a dispensation for a non-Catholic wedding and they had a non-Catholic wedding, well, then it's a slam dunk they're going to get the annulment and the above logic doesn't apply. But for ordinary situations, it's not recommended.
Great. I love your answer. Thank you. Well, my second question kind of answered it, but I was just wondering if, say, a layperson was to take this route, and they dated and then they got married. They got the annulment and then they got married. And let's say this layperson was like involved with some sort of ministry or apostolate. Do you think that layperson should probably disclose that, say, hey, this is what I did. I'm involved with this, ministry, and, I dated this person before they got their annulment and even became engaged to them. And, it was the wrong thing to do, or do you think
disclose it to whom?
About it? I was just thinking if they're involved in some sort of public ministry.
Well, you mean disclose it to the people they work for in the ministry, or what?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Well, so there is there is such a thing as privacy. I mean, that's why we have the seal of confession. And there are certain things that are nobody's business. And so I would say that unless the ministry had a strong reason to know about this, then it's not the ministry's business. And so I wouldn't see any need or advisability to bringing it up, especially if the situation's already been taken care of. Because if the situation's been taken care of, it's history, and it would be very unlikely that the ministry could be substantially damaged if this came to light. And it's like, yeah, this person years ago did something they shouldn't have, but it's since been taken care of and they've made it right.
Yeah. John, I'm going to leave it there. Come by and for a visit sometime. It would be nice to meet you since you're in the neighborhood, and we love giving tours and stuff like that, or maybe come by for the show. But I got to go to the first break, so we'll do that, and we'll come back. For more questions for Jimmy Akin, it's open forum. The number 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Brian Patrick and a panel of international contributors showcase the universality of Catholicism.
Each week on the Catholic Sphere, we connect with EWTN contributors from different parts of the world. Each, I think, has a unique perspective on issues of concern for all of us as Catholics. It reminds us that we're really a universal church. Christ called all of us to be his disciples.
The Catholic Sphere, Sunday afternoon, 2:30 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Don't forget, we got that store-wide sale going on. Everything's on sale over at shop.catholic.com. Comes with $5 flat rate shipping, no matter how much you buy, anywhere in the continental U.S. Everything's on sale, 10, 25, 50, maybe even more than 50% off. Visit shop.catholic.com today and check out all the ways you can save. Now we're going to Indiana. Jeff in Indiana, you are up next. Go ahead with your question, please, for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, fantastic. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy
so
to.
the conversations had come up with the thief on the cross, as far as with some of my Protestant friends about arguing that he was never baptized. And my new favorite question to them is, where's that in the Bible? And but then we were talking about how Romans 6 verses 3 and 4 talks about how that we're baptized, by being baptized, we're baptized into Christ's death. I was like, if anything, there's kind of an argument for, you could argue that he was baptized. And then later on, in putting together some scriptures on what baptism is and isn't, came across the Gospel of John 3:5, where the Lord himself says that you've got to be baptized to enter the kingdom. And so I'm thinking that that's kind of a strong leaning that way, and wanted your thoughts.
So this is something that what I'm about to say is something that is not unique to Catholics. It's something that is agreed to by thoughtful Protestants as well. Hard cases make bad theology. There are situations in Scripture where something clearly atypical is happening, and what you don't do is use those to build your theology about what is normal. What those cases can do is show you what's possible. What if God allowed something to happen on one occasion? Well, he might allow it to happen on another occasion, and so you can use unusual, atypical situations in Scripture to show the limits, or to at least explore the limits of what's possible in terms of what God will allow, but you can't use them to establish what's normal. And so we have these passages in Romans and John and 1 Peter and elsewhere that indicate that at least normally water baptism or sacramental baptism is the way that God gives us salvation and brings us into his kingdom. And so that's the norm. Now, here in the case of the thief on the cross, we technically don't know whether he was baptized or not because we're not told. Probably he was not baptized. We do know that he was saved. And so given that probably he was not baptized, but we do know he was saved, you can legitimately infer that, okay, on some occasions, God will save someone even if they don't appear to be baptized. Okay, fine. The Catholic Church doesn't dispute that. The Catholic Church doesn't treat the baptismal commands as if they're absolute exceptionless things. In fact, the Church has a rather developed theology of how the graces of salvation can be given to someone even if they are not sacramentally baptized. And if you look into the Catechism of the Catholic Church or other books of Catholic theology and Catholic doctrine, you'll see it being discussed, you'll see a concept being discussed called baptism of desire. And baptism of desire is what someone has if they desire to follow Christ and to be a Christian, and they would be baptized if they had the opportunity. And that's the obvious rubric under which to handle the thief on the cross. He clearly desires to be a follower of Jesus, and so he would he would therefore be baptized if he had the opportunity, but he doesn't. And so since he probably was not already baptized, the natural way to explain his salvation is in terms of the category of baptism of desire.
Jeff, I'm going to leave it there and say thanks very much for the question, because there are lots and lots of people on the line, as happens when we do an open forum, especially with Jimmy on Thursdays. Going to our friend Sean up in Port Perry, Canada, listening on the Alexa. Sorry, not supposed to say Alexa. That turns on people's Alexa. I won't do it again.
Not typically, it doesn't.
Sean, I first of all, it's not ready yet. That's why you don't have it. So I just want to say that because I know one thing that's going to come up. But you got a question for Jimmy?
No, I wasn't going to mention it. I believe you.
Yeah, I was
when
told
it's ready, you'll tell me.
It's supposed to be out, but it's just not out yet. We're talking about the audio version of my book, A Teacher of Strange Things. I promised Sean I would send it to him when it's out, but it's just not out yet.
Well, and I believe you. So I know that when it's ready, you will let me know. I don't even have a doubt about that.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean. What you got for Jimmy today?
So this is a weird science question, Jimmy, and I don't know whether you've ever even heard about this. Back in the late 1950s, when I was 7 or 8 years old, my mother read an article to me out of a newspaper or a magazine which was predicting things about the future, and it said that in our lifetimes we would be able to obtain sort of a backpack type of machine that would enable individual people to fly at 20 or 30 feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So one could go outside of one's house, go up into the air, fly to work, come down on the ground, go inside, do one's work, and then go back home or go to the grocery store or church or whatever. But wherever they needed to go, they would be able to fly with this little machine. And I just wonder if anybody ever came up with even a prototype of that gizmo.
Oh, yeah. These are called jet packs. There's also sometimes called rocket packs or rocket belts. And we've had prototypes of them since, I think, at least the 1960s. So they're real. They exist. There are some difficulties with them. Flying them can be a little bit tricky. But they do exist. They have for decades. And they're even commercially available now. I understand that that you can buy one for about $400,000. So
Really?
they don't have the economies of scale going to bring them down to a price point that normal people can afford, but they are commercially available.
Is that American dollars or Canadian dollars? Sean, you're going to have to do the
They're
math
pretty
on
close.
that. Yeah, they also, I mean, more and more there's people that are flying around on drones using propellers. So that's another thing, Sean.
And there are flying cars. There was a new one called the Jetson 1 model that was just announced.
Finally, now I can take Astro out for a ride. Does that satisfy you, Sean?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's always nice to talk with you. And one of these days, it's coming.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I didn't know he was going to respond, so I clicked hold. All right, we're going to Dan in Pittsburgh. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Dan, listening on EWTN. Go ahead with your question, Dan.
Hi, guys. I hope your day is going well. So my question is about Pope Francis basically saying over the years, the past couple of years, that different religions are a way to come to God. And, I've been curious if that goes against, the teachings that multiple popes have said that, there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church, that we are basically the true church. So does that not also go against the encyclical by Pius XI that talks about ecumenism? So that's what I'm curious about, Jimmy.
Okay, so I'm at a bit of a loss because I don't know what statements you're referring to by Pope Francis. I would have to see the statements themselves and look at how they're worded. In terms of does it contradict previous teaching, well, there is such a thing as development of doctrine, and the Church has recognized for centuries that it's possible for people to be saved even if they're not baptized Catholics. We talked about baptism of desire just a few minutes ago, and the Church has recognized that people who were not baptized could have baptism of desire and be saved even though they're not members of the Church and during their lifetimes. And so that's been a recognition that goes back to the early church fathers. I mean, St. Augustine talks about this, for example. And it's been the case all the way down through history. Now, after the discovery of the New World, it suddenly became obvious in a way it hadn't before to people, to Catholic theologians, that, there are millions and millions of people who have never even heard the gospel. And that prompted a rethinking of, well, under what conditions can someone be saved? Because you can't simply say, well, everyone who is around has heard the gospel in some form, and if they've rejected it, they must be If they don't believe it, then they must be personally at fault, and so they're going to go to hell. Because now we knew there were millions of people after North and South America were discovered that had never had the opportunity to hear the gospel. So obviously they couldn't be personally at fault for not believing it. And by the 19th century, you had popes like Pius IX saying, yeah, it is possible for someone who is not Catholic in this life to be innocently unaware of the truth of the Catholic faith, and as a result, they can still be saved if they otherwise respond to God's grace. And that's nothing new. Now, there has been a growth in the appreciation of that truth, but this is something that Vatican II taught. It's something that's been taught by various popes down through the years. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith made this point very forcefully back in the 1940s, and so I am unaware of anything Pope Francis has said that would contradict that. Now, you know, he sometimes speaks off the top of his head in like airplane interviews and stuff, and he may not always phrase things in a technically precise way, but I am unaware of him saying anything that would contradict previous teaching in substance.
Dan, thank you very, very much. All the lines full. It's open forum. We'll keep moving. CJ in Jamestown, North Dakota, watching on YouTube. You're up next. CJ, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Cy. How are you guys doing?
Very well, thank you.
All right, so I am a recent convert to Catholicism. You guys both played a pretty big part in that, so thank you.
Well, thank you for telling us that, CJ.
I recently, when I have a Protestant Bible study, and when I went to the leader, a good friend of mine, and kind of told him that I was converting to or planned on converting to Catholicism, and wanted to have a conversation around him, he kind of more or less avoided the issue and was just like, well, hey, it's just a denominational thing. All we need is Jesus. This isn't really important. This is a side issue, and I couldn't really get into the issue of Catholicism with him, and I was wondering how I can, in a respectful and loving way, without coming across like a bully, kind of say there's more at stake here than it's more than just, oh, we both have Jesus, it's okay. There's theological stuff at stake here.
So are you wanting to bring this up with him privately or in the context of the Bible study itself?
Privately at first, and then I don't really know, I guess, the ethics of kind of being a Catholic at a Protestant Bible study.
So bringing it up privately is what I would recommend. I would suggest that you look up a paper that I wrote. It's called "Why Be Catholic: An Exercise for Evangelicals," and it's available at jimmyakin.com. But if you just Google "Why Be Catholic: An Exercise for Evangelicals," Jimmy Akin, it should come up for you. And it's a talk. It's notes from a talk that I gave some years ago at an evangelical seminary. And one of the things I do in it is I say, okay, let's look at the biblical data that we have where Jesus talks about his church. Because if you look carefully at what Jesus says about his church, you can establish various things about it, including the idea that it is really sometimes called a visible church. It's an identifiable one. It's just not an invisible union of all believers, which is often how people who will say, well, what denomination you are doesn't matter. They're usually thinking, oh, well, the church is just some kind of invisible spiritual union of everybody who's a believer in Jesus. That's not how Jesus understood his church. And so if you look carefully at how Jesus understood his church, it becomes clear that it's a visible church with leaders and followers, and it has existed since the first century. And so once you've established that, which I do in this paper, it's very easy to say, okay, it does matter what church you belong to. It is not just a me and Jesus thing. Jesus' church is not just an invisible spiritual union. It is an institution that really has existed since the first century. And if you want to be part of Jesus' church in the full sense, you need to take that seriously.
Does that help you, CJ?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, appreciate both of you guys. You're doing great work.
Well, CJ, you're new to the church. I'd love to send you Jimmy's book, The Words of Eternal Life, but do you have that book yet? Because I'll send it to you if you don't.
I do not. The only Catholic Answers book I have right now is Hard Sayings by Trent Horn. So
Oh, well, this is, we need to help you out then. The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It. It's just a beautiful kind of review for some and introduction for others to the what the Christian faith is all about. So I'd love to send it to you if you want it. Hang on the line. We'll get Thomas to get your information, and then we'll send it off. Thank you very much, CJ. Going over to Fort Wayne, Indiana now. John is listening on Redeemer Radio in Fort Wayne. Glad to have you, John. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, Jimmy and Cy. How are you guys doing?
I'm very well, but I messed up. I answered the phone. I got you on the line right as we're going to the break. Can you hang on a couple minutes?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry, John. Thank you for holding on. We'll be right back with more with Jimmy Akin. Open forum. Your questions welcome. 888-318-7884.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Tomorrow on More to Life, emotional labor.
Are you worn out from being the only one who cares? We'll help you stop feeling like it's all up to you.
That's tomorrow on More to Life. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
I learned my lesson. I let the music play for a minute there. Jimmy Akin, our guest. That's the groovy music. Thank you, Brandon, very much for playing the groovy music. It's Thursday. It's open forum. That's usually when you get the groovy music. And John in Fort Wayne, Indiana, has been waiting, and I appreciate your patience, John. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I also enjoy the groovy music, so I appreciate listening to that.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I also learned my lesson about not talking over music, but I'll tell you that
we'll do that
after we answer John's question.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so at our parish, we're doing a small faith community study of C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce. Mm-hmm. And as part of our discussion of that, I had an interesting thought come up that I've had for a while. And in particular, it relates to the final judgment, which C.S. Lewis is kind of wrestling with in that book and giving his take on it. And so in line with our faith belief on our free will here on earth to freely choose whether to accept the gospel of Christ or to reject it and live our life as we choose. I wanted to get your thoughts, Jimmy, on in the afterlife, kind of God allowing that concept of free will to go to complete fruition, and that when we're in the afterlife, after we're not limited by our human mind and memory of all the things that we have done, either knowingly or the ripple effect of our sins throughout life, if God basically presents our life before us and says, okay, here's your life, you can see everything that you have done, both the good and the not so good, do you feel that you are worthy of eternal life, or do you desire the pains of hell?
All right, leaving it at our hands a bit.
So it's interesting to think through possibilities about what happens to us in the afterlife, because we really don't know a lot about what happens. I mean, we know that if we die in God's friendship, it's going to be really great, but our minds in this life are not configured to understand eternal spiritual realities. And so the imagery we find and the descriptions we find in Scripture and in church fathers and theologians are aids to helping us understand something of what it's going to be like, but we can't rely on the details too much. Now, like there aren't going to be literally streets of transparent gold in heaven. Maybe transparent aluminum, but probably not transparent gold.
Very fancy.
Yeah. And so it sounds to me like what you're proposing, if I understand you correctly, is something that converges to the thought that some theologians have had down through the centuries, that when God judges us, we will understand and accept that judgment. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like people who are going to hell are going to be saying, this isn't fair. Instead, it'll be obvious to everybody, okay, I responded to God's grace, and so I'm qualified by His grace to be able to go to heaven, and I'll see that and accept it. And in the same way, if I have not responded to God's grace, if I've just lived and died closed off to His grace, then I would say, okay, well, I've made this choice against God, and it's fair for me to spend eternity without God because I don't even actually want to be around Him.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to cause frustration for me, but that's what I've chosen and that's what I prefer. And so I think that there are different ways that this could be understood. I don't think theology and certainly church doctrine does not mandate a single understanding of this, but certainly there have been people who have proposed that when we are judged by God, we will understand and accept and appreciate the judgment for what it is. And so if you want to picture that as God saying, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
Based on what I've just laid out in front of you, that could be a way of conceptualizing how we will understand and appreciate the judgment, which is really simply a reflection of our own choice. Do we choose God's grace and love, or do we choose to reject them? It's our choice, and this is just another way of depicting that.
Yeah. What do you think, John?
Yeah, actually, that makes sense. It's kind of a cooperative thing, and like you said, that we would understand and kind of internalize that based on how we have our disposition at the end of our life. Like with the concept of purgatory, that you still have some of those desires. You may not be in a state of sin when you die, but you have those desires, and you could understand and accept how God would put you in that state of purgation, purifying you to be in the presence of God.
Oh, yeah.
So, that falls in line.
All right, John, who's the baby?
That is my son, Ben.
Oh, well.
We're actually on the way to a trunk and treat.
And actually, Ben is the Hebrew word for son.
Oh, look at that. You're a genius, John. You joined us right as the groovy music was about to play. You named your son Son. Nice going.
And that reminds me of the music.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, so when I learned to be a square dance caller, there are different traditions in square dance, and one of the old ways of doing it, this was common back in the 50s and 60s and stuff, there was an older style where you, instead of just giving the instructions to the dancers, like do-si-do, Alamand left, you would add a bunch of filler words to turn it into a kind of chant. So it'd be like, Alamand left with your left hand, back to the partner, right and left grand, hand over hand, around you go, you meet your own, and do-si-do. As opposed to just saying, Alamand left, right and left grand, do-si-do.
I see.
And so I'm from the modern generation of square dance callers, and so much of the time I would minimize those filler words because they're kind of old fashioned, and sometimes they don't make any sense. But they're kind of old fashioned, and what I found is it improves dancer success because the commands stand out.
Oh, yeah. Right.
They're not buried in this avalanche of words.
Right.
Also, they get to hear the music. And this became even more clear to me when I started learning to call other forms of dance. Now, in modern Western square dancing, you call to the beat, but not to the musical phrase. At least not normally. So like a typical musical phrase is 8 beats long, and I just have to get on the beat, the Allemande left at some point. I don't have to make that Allemande left coincide with the end of a musical phrase.
Gotcha.
But in other forms of dance, you have to call to the phrase. And so I would be counting like silently in my head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Allemande left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do, si, do, and things like that. And when I learned how to do that, when I started calling to the musical phrase instead of just to the beat, it opened up all of this. It not only gave the dancers adequate time to do the move, but it opened up all of this musical space where they get to listen to the music for 6 whole beats without me talking over it.
Oh, how interesting.
And it made the music much more vivid if you don't talk over it for the dancers.
Oh, what a cool story. That is really... Now, it's interesting to me, like you said, do-si-do. Say you're calling Western square dance and then you're calling... some older English dance, for example. Is the terminology the same? Like
frequently it is, because originally in England, like 400 years ago, you had what was called English country dance, and it was sort of the mother dance style from which square dancing and contra dancing and contemporary English country dancing came. And so you do find a lot of the moves are the same, a lot of the terminology is the same. Some of it is different. Do-si-do is French for back to back.
I see.
And so in square dancing and contra dancing, the term is do-si-do, and it just means go back to back with your partner, and then you step back to where you came from. In English country dancing and Morris dancing, though, it's left in English, and so you say back to back for that move instead of do-si-do.
Yeah. The English, they don't need those French phrases in their good English dances. All right, well, I think we got time for another caller before we have to go to break. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Shane in Minford, Ohio, watching on Facebook. Glad to have you, Shane. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, good evening, guys. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I've got a Protestant friend of mine who I love, but has been sending me a lot of articles and things on this new. It looks like in Abu Dhabi, there's going to be basically a committee for human fraternity where they're building a synagogue, a church, and a mosque together. And her concern is, one, Jesus is left out of it, and they're even calling it Chrislam. And just wondering, and she's also worried about it going towards the one world, like a one world religion.
Okay.
And I don't know really how to respond to that.
Well, so I would have to know more about this project to comment on it specifically, but the idea that there are some people doing something religiously in the world that is a bad idea somewhere in the world is totally nothing new. Also, having interfaith worship spaces is also nothing new. If you go to a military base, they're going to have a chapel, and the chapel is going to serve as a place for Protestant worship, and a place for Catholic worship, and a place for Jewish worship, and a place for Muslim worship. So the idea of having a single worship space that serves multiple different religious traditions is nothing new, and the fact we've had them on military bases since who knows how long isn't a sign of some coming one world religion. It just is a functional thing. because on a typical military base, it would be hard to build multiple different things. And so it's easier for practical reasons in the military to use the same space for worship in general, but you still segregate it based on what the religion is. Now, you segregate it time-wise instead of space-wise.
Yeah.
So are there people who carry ecumenical ideas to an extreme or interreligious ideas to an extreme in the world? Absolutely. Is that a sign of the imminent coming of the eschaton or the end of the world? No. We've already had all kinds of syncretistic. That means syncretism is a merger of different religions. We've had syncretistic people all the way down through history. In fact, when they're first mentioned in the Bible, the Old Testament.
Yeah. Right.
Because that's what the prophets are always going on about, is stop this syncretism between Yahweh worship and Baal worship.
Yeah.
And other pagan divinities. So there's been syncretism all the way down through world history. If these people associated with this worship center are even syncretistic, they may not be. It may be more like, okay, we're building this as a sign that we can all get along, but here's our synagogue space for Jewish people, here's our mosque space for Muslim people, here's our church space for Christian people, and they're not combining the beliefs. They're just saying, they're just doing this as a sign we can get along. Also, in terms of the term Chrislam, now where I'm familiar with that is not an interfaith thing where you say we're all getting along. Where I'm familiar with that is an evangelization movement that's become common among some Protestant missionaries, where you preach the gospel of Christ to Muslims and you get them to convert, but because it's so dangerous for them to publicly apostatize from Islam, you let them maintain a culturally Muslim identity while they're secretly believers in Jesus. And there are problems with this arrangement. There are also there are some difficulties with the way it's often presented, but I don't know if that's what's going on here or not. The fundamental problem with your friend, though, is she's got this idea there's going to be a one-world religion. That's not taught in Scripture. That's an idea that has become popular in certain evangelical circles as a result of a movement called dispensationalism. But it is not based in Scripture. Scripture does not teach that there's going to be an imminent merger of different religions or anything like that. And I would suggest checking out some of the stuff I've written on, like 20 Answers Bible Prophecy, 20 Answers End Times is probably even better on that. And you also might want to check out the forthcoming 20 Answers Revelation that I've written.
Well, we've got 20 Answers End Times in stock. So who's on the phones? Thomas, if you could take Shane's information, if he wants to give it to you, we'll send it to him. But I got to go to a break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
Thank you for all the work that you've done. I work at it, and then it's like, I stop, and then I start, and then I stop. You've done so much, and thank you for everything you do. And thank you, EWTN. I mean, I had a line that I could spread at work today from what I heard this morning on EWTN, that it took a woman to put Jesus on the earth.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live, 2 hours of Open Forum with Jimmy Akin today. You're welcome to call if you have questions about the Catholic faith, Catholic people, Catholic history. You want to know about the Bible, the sacraments, 888-318-7884. You don't have to be Catholic to call. You don't have to be Christian to call. Anybody can call with any question at all. 888-318-7884. And when Jimmy's here, you can pretty much call and ask anything you want. We just like having a conversation with you. Call with your questions. Let's go to Thomas in Tennessee, listening on EWTN. Thomas, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. Jimmy, I want to ask you about the Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People. I have a friend who said this is a must-read for Catholics, and I never heard about it until recently, don't know anything about it, and I was just curious if you can give me a rundown and if it is a must-read for us.
Well, okay, so first of all, the name is pronounced Bede. In the olden days, it would have been pronounced Beda, because all those silent E's we have in English,
they didn't used to be silent?
Didn't used to be silent. They used to be pronounced, just like they are in German today. So if you see, like, one of a physicist that I follow, her name you might pronounce, if it was English, Sabine, but because she's German, it's Sabina, because she's got an E on the end of her name. So in German, you always pronounce those E's, and in English, you used to. So it would have been Beda at one time, but now it's just called Bede. Now he's just called Bede. And he's often called the Venerable Bede, even though he's actually a canonized saint. This is venerable in the old sense of, like, he's an older person who's very worthy of respect. So anyway, the Venerable Bede is a Christian saint and historian who lived in the 600s and 700s in England, and he wrote, his most famous work is his Ecclesiastical History of the English People, and the name is kind of truth in advertising. He's going to give you a church or ecclesiastical history of the English people down to his day. And in the course of doing that, he's going to touch on various theological matters. He's also going to touch on various matters of history and culture and how the Christian faith spread among the English and how it relates to other pagan beliefs that people used to have, but that they had converted away from. And so it's a fascinating work of history, and he's got quality theology as well, because he's a doctor of the church. And so while I couldn't say, oh, everybody must read Bede, I'd have him read the Bible and the Catechism. I would say those are must-reads, but reading his history of the ecclesiastical history is a great thing to do, and I wouldn't discourage anybody. If someone's interested in reading it, I'd say, by all means, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks very, very much. I love all those names, the old English names. I won't try to pronounce them, but even the first English kings,
Wilf and stuff like that.
Always some wild thing, yeah.
Adalbert.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, Nathan, we're going to go to Nathan. Oh, you want to say something first?
I was just thinking of the name Ethelred, which is sometimes, there's a joke about Ethelred the Unready.
Was it because it was unready for the Vikings? Or?
For battle, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nathan in Wallingford, Connecticut, watching on Twitch. That's so exciting to me that you're watching on Twitch, because I have no idea what Twitch is. Glad to have you, Nathan. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Are you a gamer? Is it a gaming thing, Twitch?
I don't know what it is. I'm just watching. It's on the website, and I went to the website to watch it.
Oh, I've got you. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
So I've been told by various people that if you don't make the gospel at Mass, you can't receive communion, and that it doesn't count for your Sunday obligation. Is that true?
No. This is an urban legend, or a Catholic urban legend. The first thing is whether you can receive communion has nothing to do with whether a particular liturgy is going to fulfill your Sunday obligation or not. You can be, and this is expressly envisioned in various documents that the Congregation for Divine Worship has published. You can be walking through a church at communion time and receive communion. You can be in a communion service, it's not even a Mass, and receive communion. So the idea you've got to be there for some part of the Mass in order to receive, in addition to being there for communion, in order to receive communion, is false. It is nonsense. The two have nothing to do with each other. Now, so I could be walking through, I've missed the gospel, I've missed everything, down to communion time. I'm walking through a church on a Sunday at communion time. I can receive communion. Have I fulfilled my Sunday obligation? No. All that means is I need to go to another Mass. But I can receive communion at the first one. In terms of how much do you need to be present for your obligation to count, well, assuming you don't have an excuse that would excuse you from your obligation, the church has not provided specific guidance on this in its current draft of the law. But if we use the older, principles from before the revision of the code, as long as you're there by the beginning of the liturgy of the Eucharist, it should count. And also, people often fixate on the gospel in a way that's irrelevant. It's like if you don't hear the gospel, it doesn't count. Nonsense. You are not required to hear any particular gospel readings on Sunday. You can go to a Mass in a completely different Catholic rite where they're using completely different readings, and it will count for your Sunday obligation. The code makes that clear. So what readings you hear, what version of the gospel you hear, has nothing to do with your Sunday obligation.
Does that help you, Nathan?
Yeah, so the church hasn't said anything on it yet. So would you recommend just being there, like, if you're late through no fault of your own, by the liturgy of the Eucharist?
Yeah, if I showed up late through no fault of my own, as long as I'm there by the beginning of the liturgy of the Eucharist, I would not consider myself bound to go to an additional Mass that day.
Okay, thank you. That really helps.
All right, great. Thanks very, very much. Let's go. We're heading up to Canada. William in Saskatchewan, Canada, listening on Catholic.com. Glad to have you, William. You got to be quick with your question.
Hey, how's it going? My question is regarding confession and penance, more specifically. I made a general confession 2 years ago, and my confessor didn't give me a penance. He said my preparation for the confession was penance enough, and I was just wondering if that's valid then.
That will not invalidate the confession. Now, he should have given you something else in addition, but he didn't, and that's on him. It is not on you. So you did what was required, even though he should have given you a penance. It doesn't invalidate the absolution because you were willing to do whatever penance he would have given you, and so you were not putting a barrier between you and receiving God's grace.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. But you kind of you did such a good job, William. I thought usually when I say ask your question quickly, I have to get 2 minutes of stuff before the question comes out.
Yeah.
No, look at this, Jimmy. He got that out in like 10 seconds.
He did. That was
a good
awesome.
job. Jimmy Akin is our guest. It's Open Forum. We're going to continue with Open Forum next hour, so your calls are welcome. If you just joining us and you're not familiar with what Catholic Answers is, we just answer questions about the Catholic faith. That's what we do. We explain it and we defend it. And whether you're Catholic or not, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. And as I said, another full hour of this. At the current moment, just one line open, but we'll persist and we'll get some questions answered, and then there'll be more lines open. Jimmy, in addition to being here as the apologist, is also the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Just recently, 2 episodes on Noah and the flood,
right?
All of that,
yep.
Which I have to admit I have not listened to, but you were happy with them?
I was, yeah. A lot of people were.
You got a lot of good feedback on it?
Oh, yeah.
And tomorrow is going to be, it's kind of like a grab bag of fun. You just get questions from your patrons.
From the patrons.
And answer those. I am looking forward to the Canals of Mars one.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting to me.
We need Gondoliers of Mars. That should be like a Edgar Rice Burroughs novel.
Exactly. If you're going to have
Gondoliers of
canals,
Mars.
you should have gondoliers, right? Singing not in Italian, but in
Martian.
What's that? I forgot the name.
Barsoomian?
Barsoomian, yes. Singing in Barsoomian. All right. We're going to take a very, very brief break, and then we will be back to answer more questions. Please, if you're on the line, stay on the line. We're not going to be gone that long. And don't forget, shop.catholic.com. We got that big Christmas sale going on. And look, it's a Christmas sale because everybody's worried about getting their stuff on time for Christmas. So want to get some great deals with very inexpensive shipping, $5 flat rate shipping right now on everything. Just go to shop.catholic.com. Right back after this. Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin is our guest, and it's open forum, which is always fun on a Thursday. Lots and lots of folks on the line. The number is 888-318-7884. You can give it a try. Eventually, you'll get in. But right now, all the lines tied up. 888-318-7884. I think we'll just go right back to the lines. I felt like there was something I was going to say to you before we did that, but
Okay.
it went out of my head.
There was something I was going to say to you.
Do you want to say it now, or do you
I don't
remember?
care. Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
I was noticing, so you know how like Facebook shows you pictures from a couple of years ago and stuff?
Yeah.
And I had started growing my beard out, a few years ago, and I thought it had reached terminal length because I remember we would talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
Occasionally people would ask about it.
Right.
And I thought that it had reached terminal length, and it was about, if measuring from my chin, it was about 12 inches long at the time. But I was looking at these pictures from a few years ago on Facebook, like from our conference a couple of years ago, and I'm going, my beard is longer than that now. So apparently it was not at terminal length, which is the length your hair grows to and then stops.
Yeah.
Because now it's like actually, it's down to my belly button.
So it just slowed down probably enough that
Yeah,
you thought.
it slowed down. I thought it was at terminal length, but apparently it's not.
Yeah. All right.
And so now these days it looks kind of like there's a Sherlock Holmes story, and I'm forgetting which one it is, but there's a Sherlock Holmes story where this nobleman's son has been seemingly kidnapped. And so Sherlock is talking to the nobleman who's a duke, and they comment that he's got this red beard that goes down his chest and to his over his stomach and dwindles as it goes. So he's got this long pointed one.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on achieving an even
greater
longer terminal length.
Yeah.
So we'll
that's kind of cool.
We'll check back in. It's sometimes those pictures come up on Facebook and you're like, "What? That was 5 years ago or whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which I think is right outside of Philadelphia. I'm not sure. Watching on Facebook, Sarah from Lancaster. You there with us, Sarah? Oh, hang on. Hold on, Sarah. I just pushed the wrong button. I do that sometimes. Sarah, you there with us?
Hi, I am. Yes, thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. Where's Lancaster in Pennsylvania? I'm just curious.
It's in the middle of Amish country,
Ah,
like in between Harrisburg and Philadelphia.
Yeah, I was completely wrong about that. Okay, go ahead, Sarah, with your question.
Well, first, thank you for taking my call. So I am a recent convert to Catholicism. I used to be a very Pentecostal Word of Faith Mennonite. So when I converted, I had a lot of family who were really against it.
Mhm.
And so my two questions kind of come from my conversations with them, and they both pertain to the saints, so hopefully they'll be quick. The first one is, I know that when we pray or we bow or sing to Mary, that it's not worship.
Mm-hmm.
It's just honoring her.
Yeah.
But I don't really know how to explain how when we do those things to God, it is considered worship, but
Okay.
it's not when we do it to Mary.
So it's because of the different intention. Now, suppose you mentioned bowing, and sometimes people get tied in knots, especially from the Protestant community about this. It's like, oh, how can people bow in front of a statue of Mary? Don't you know that violates the Ten Commandments where it says don't make graven images and bow down to them and stuff? And it's very clear from the context culturally in the Ten Commandments that it's talking about idols. And what idols were in the ancient Near East was a vessel for a god to come and inhabit. So this was true in Egypt, it was true elsewhere in the ancient Near East, and so you believed that there was a deity inside the idol. And Sarah, do you believe that there is a deity inside of an idol of Mary?
No.
Okay, so it's not going to be worship. It's certainly not divine worship. It's just respect if you're bowing in front of an image of Mary. Just like if you go over to England and you get an audience with the Queen, if you bow in front of the Queen, it's just respect. Or if you go to Japan on a business trip, and it's morning and you come down to meet your business partner in Japan and you bow and you say, "Ohayo gozaimasu." Well, okay, that's just respect. That's not worship, because you don't view your business partner or the Queen of England or the Virgin Mary as a deity. You recognize that they're not gods. And so, well, let's suppose you're bowing to God. Is God a deity, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the difference. The difference is that we recognize God is a deity. These others are not deities. They're just human beings, however much respect they deserve. And in the same way, praying, okay, so praying in the sense of asking Mary for her intercession is just making a request. But are you saying, "Oh, Mary, you're divine, you're the creator of the universe, you're infinite"? Are you saying stuff like that to Mary?
No.
Well, then you're not praying to Mary in the divine sense. You would say those things to God, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the difference. The difference is that when we have devotional acts that we perform with respect to God, we recognize that He's a deity. And when we have acts of reverence that we direct to other human beings, including Mary and the saints, we recognize that they're not deities. And that's the essential difference. There's more to say about that. I've been meaning to write a blog post or an article called "What's Wrong with Idolatry?" where I make it clear idolatry is wrong. Now let's talk about what it actually is, because it's not these outward physical things like using words to talk to someone or bowing or kissing or anything like that. Idolatry has to involve more than that. And so I've been meaning to write about that. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. But you said, Sarah, you had a second question. What was that?
Yes. So the other thing that that they've said to me is that if I'm praying to saints, I'm actually praying to demons.
Yeah, why would they say that? Have they given you any evidence for that?
They haven't. It's a really big thing,
Mm-hmm.
like, I guess, in the Pentecostal thing, like if people are talking to ghosts or if, like, it's really a demon. It's not a ghost that's in your house. So demons are kind of behind every door. So for their logic, it's like, well, there's only God. You can only talk to God. So if you're talking to anything else, it's demonic.
Oh, really? That's very interesting, because then you know who the Virgin Mary must have been talking to when she was told she's going to have Jesus?
Gabriel was really a demon?
She was talking to a demon. Who knew about that?
That changes
wow.
everything.
Yeah. So no, that's nonsense. And if anyone presents you with a claim, I mean, by all means, ask them what's your evidence for that. And you can consider their evidence. In this case, there's no good evidence for this. This is a stupid claim. And I get personally really tired of people, and it's not just people in the Protestant community. A lot of Catholics do this too, where they'll assume anything is a demon.
Yeah.
And they'll just assert it as if, as if I have some obligation to believe it. I'll tell you who I'm talking to is the person I'm talking to. So if I'm talking to Cy Kellett,
okay,
I'm talking to Cy Kellett. Now, maybe Cy Kellett isn't in the room with me, but I'm not talking to a demon. I'm talking to the person I'm intending to talk to. And if now, could a demon be overhearing the conversation, and could he impersonate Cy Kellett? Well, maybe, but I need evidence for that. I'm not talking to a demon. I'm talking to the person I'm talking to. So otherwise you could say, well, how do you know when you're talking to God if it's not really a demon intercepting your prayer and pretending to be God? No, God knows when you're talking to him. And in the same way, if I'm talking to the Virgin Mary, that's who I'm talking to. Now, if someone answers back, well, then I have a different question, because we are told if someone answers back, we're told test the spirits, because they're not all from God. Spirit demons can impersonate other people's spirits, And so I would need to test it and say, okay, if I'm hearing from God or a saint, I need to say, okay, could this be my imagination? Could it be some form of deception from the supernatural world? Or is it really God or the saint talking to me? But I don't get to just assume it's demons or assume it's not. I have to look for evidence on that question. So if you ever hear back from the Virgin Mary, you will want to consider that question. Yeah. But until you hear back, you're talking to the Virgin Mary when you're talking to the Virgin Mary. By the way, recently, so on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, we have a couple of sayings. They're tongue-in-cheek sayings, but the sayings are, it's always aliens and it's always demons, because those are the two explanations that people just reflexively leap to. Mm-hmm. And usually it's neither one. But those are the two that people always want to say. Something strange happens, it's aliens. Something strange happens, it's demons.
Right.
Well, it is not. And to make that point, I recently started scripting an episode that's going to be called "It's Always Demons?" ? Where I'm going to go through the evidence and point out here it's not always demons. Here's how we know it's not always demons, and here are the tests you can use based on what we do know about demons to actually evaluate the situation. But we should not reflexively assume that it's demons. And in fact, one of the things I do in this episode, I start out the episode to make it clear how we shouldn't be just irresponsibly speculating that things are demons when we don't have evidence for that. I start off with a series of about 8 quick examples where people assumed someone was possessed and then tried to exorcise them, and they died.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes.
And sometimes they die in awful ways.
Right.
And when people reflexively just say, oh, this must be demons, you're feeding that culture where people mistakenly think that demons are present when they're not. And then they undertake actions which are sometimes horrific, like let's hold your son's face under the hot water faucet for 5 to 10 minutes to try to use the hot water to expel the demon, and he dies and is scalded all over his body. That's the kind of culture that gets fed into by irresponsibly asserting that things are demons without any evidence.
Sarah, what do you think? All that makes sense to you?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, Sarah, how long did you say you had been or in the Catholic Church? When did you come in?
I came in during the pandemic, so it's been about a year.
Awesome.
Oh, congratulations. Well, I'd like to send you, if you'd like, a copy of it. It's always up to the listener. If you want to give us your address, we'll send you a copy of Jimmy Akin's book, The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It, for your enlightenment and ongoing reading in the faith. And thank you very much. It was really fun talking with you, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum. Jimmy Akin, right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
This is Dr. Ray Guarendi from The Doctor Is In. You call in, and we will talk about what matters to you in your life. People, circumstances, emotions, struggles. We can put our heads together, maybe raise both of our IQs to help you solve the problems of life and to use your faith to get even smarter.
The Doctor Is In with Dr. Ray Guarendi. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. We got a free ebook The free ebook right now is Mysteries and Miracles of the Catholic Church, available at shop.catholic.com. It's free to you just by heading over to shop.catholic.com and getting it. And I know it's got all kinds of interesting mysteries and miracles that you can check out there. Shop.catholic.com. Up next for Jimmy Akin, our guest, Andrew in Montana, watching on YouTube. Andrew, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question.
Hey guys, thank you very much. And Jimmy, I really am enjoying your book, The Fathers Know Best. So thank you very much for writing that. My question is regarding a philosopher, atheist friend of mine who I love very dearly. And when trying to talk to him about the Catholic faith, he keeps trying to remind me to tear down all my beliefs first and don't come from a biased perspective, and then to build it back up. But I'm afraid to do that because I'm worried that that would separate me from God if I actually tore down all my beliefs and pretended.
Yeah, don't do that.
Argument.
That seems like a bad plan.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Exactly.
And your friend doesn't do that
leads
either. Your friend, no matter what his belief system is, he has almost certainly not torn down his beliefs on every issue and rebuilt from the ground up. That's not how humans work. Now, René Descartes tried to do that, and he failed.
Yeah, he got stuck.
He thought he rebuilt his stuff from scratch, but every philosophers who've looked at it carefully have said, he's good at applying the doubt, but his rebuilding project is lame.
Yeah,
and so nobody in practice actually rejects all of their beliefs and reconstructs them from the ground up. That is not how the human mind works. And so your friend has not done it, and your friend is not inviting you to do something reasonable but something unreasonable. But how can I be of further assistance?
Well, that kind of leads into the next thing about confession, because he justified that when he told me to bring everything down, build back up. He says, well, you shouldn't worry about me because you believe that atheists can go to heaven, so you shouldn't really be worried. And then, two, you shouldn't be worried about yourself as a Catholic because all you have to do is go to confession and all your sins are forgiven, so why are you worried?
Okay, so with regard to both of those, just the fact that something is possible doesn't mean that it's likely or that it's something we should count on. For example, Cy Kellett.
Yes, Jimmy Akin.
Suppose that you decided to leap out of an airplane without a parachute. Have there ever been people who have survived leaping out of an airplane without a parachute?
Yes, I read about this Russian woman that somehow 10,000 feet she fell and landed in snow and survived.
So the argument, borrowing from Andrew's philosopher atheist friend, would be you shouldn't worry about leaping out of an airplane without a parachute because you acknowledge it's possible you could survive.
Somehow this does not seem like a logical connection to me.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And so just because it's possible for atheists to end up going to heaven doesn't mean that there's no source of concern for an atheist's salvation. So that's something I would point out in that regard. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it isn't a source of concern. In regard to you shouldn't worry for your own salvation, well, because you can just go to confession. Well, okay, your friend obviously doesn't understand what's involved in confession because you have to repent, meaning you turn your will away from the sin and say, that was wrong, I don't want to do that again. And you need to do penance and things like that so that it's not just like lip service.
Right.
So that you engage with the reality of that was wrong and I need to not do that. I need to try to overcome that sin in my life by God's grace. So the idea that it's just like filling out a form and nothing else has to be done, you just have to say the right words, is not accurate. Also, the mere fact you have to confess. When you've done something wrong and you really recognize it's wrong, it's not necessarily fun to acknowledge that verbally to another human being. And that's another way of helping bring home to you the fact that actually these sins are bad. They're things you shouldn't have done. They're shameful. And so there has to be a real conversion of the heart. involved when we go to confession, and it's not simply paying lip service to something. And so your friend, I don't think, has either an appreciation of the concern that is legitimate for people who don't believe in God, or the concern that one should have for one's own salvation and the conversion of heart that's needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this, feel free to cut me off for time's sake, but that leads to another point he brings up where when he starts from the bottom up and builds on his own philosophy, he'll say things like, if God was existence itself, because there's nothing, he's existence itself, everything is built off of existence, therefore we're all pieces of God. And
yeah, that doesn't make, that's actually not that doesn't logically follow. So Cy and I have a desk here in front of us in the studio, and the desk is supporting various things like a couple of laptops and some microphones and some pads that are under the microphones and a cross and a piece of paper. But that doesn't mean just because the desk supports these items that our laptops or the cross or the paper or the microphones are all part of the desk. They're distinct from the desk, even though they're held up by the desk. And in the same way, the fact that God is the ground of existence that holds everything else in existence doesn't obliterate the distinction between God, the ground of existence, and the particular things that exist.
It sounds a little bit like your friend might be confused about the ability to mock someone else's beliefs is not the same as understanding them or even defeating them, that those are two different things.
Well, it could be. I don't know that any mocking is actually going on here because Andrew hasn't indicated that. But it does seem to me that his friend is not making some distinctions that should be made. And if your friend is interested, Trent Horn has a book dealing with with arguments for the existence of God. You might want to check that out for him, or your friend would be more than welcome to call in here on the show, and I'd be happy to answer questions he may have.
Oh, of course, he's always welcome here, Andrew. You know what? While you're thinking through these things, I always think for someone with a mind like yours, Andrew, you might enjoy, and I'm sure you will enjoy, Jimmy Akin's book, A Daily Defense: 365 Days Plus One to Becoming a Better Apologist. So that's for you, Andrew. I'm happy to send it to you. If you want to give us your address, we will send it off to Montana. But I'm going to keep moving and say thank you very, very much for the call and for the good conversation. The number is 888-318-7884. It's open forum. Going to Richmond, Virginia now. Andrew in Richmond, Virginia, listening on the Catholic Answers app. You're up next. Go ahead, Andrew, with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I come from a Protestant background and joined the church back in 2014. And I've heard you all talk on your show and on the Focus podcast referencing the apocryphal books. So I'm kind of wondering what the Catholic definition of an apocryphal book is. And then with sometimes you all will reference the inspired writer of the Gospel according to Luke, or the inspired writer of the letter to the Hebrews. But I always thought we kind of know who wrote them, so why do we still call them the
inspired author
writers of?
Okay, so we're coming up on a break, so let me do what I can to answer your questions. The first one regarding the term apocrypha, it's used differently in different communions, and in the Catholic Church, in the English-speaking world, the term apocrypha is typically used for certain books that are not part of the Catholic canon of the Old Testament, but that were in some editions of the Septuagint, Greek translation of the Old Testament. And this would be books like 3rd and 4th Maccabees and the Prayer of Manasseh and things like that. They're part of the Protestant Apocrypha, but they're different than the Deuterocanonicals that are part of the Catholic Old Testament. There are other uses of the term Apocrypha, but that's how I would explain it in terms of when Catholics are using this term in the proper sense. That's what it means in a Catholic context. It's these books that are associated with the Old Testament and are in some editions of the Greek Old Testament, but that are not part of the Catholic canon. In terms of referring to people as the inspired author, well, sometimes we have a pretty good idea who the inspired author was. I think Luke is the author of Luke's Gospel. In the case of the book of Hebrews, even though historically a lot of people have thought it was St. Paul, in that case we really don't know. And so I'll often refer to the author of Hebrews as a way of keeping it neutral. But if I say the inspired author, even if I know who the inspired author was, the reason I'll say the inspired author is either just for stylistic variation, so I'm not saying the same name all the time, or to remind people he's divinely inspired.
Right.
So you got to take what he says seriously because he's divinely inspired. And saying the inspired author points that out in a way that it's not pointed out if I just say Paul or something like that.
Right. Andrew, thanks. I very much appreciate the call. We're going to come back in just a minute with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin, so stay on the line, folks. We've got a lot more calls to get to right after this.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Tomorrow on More to Life, emotional labor.
Are you worn out from being the only one who cares? We'll help you stop feeling like it's all up to you.
That's tomorrow on More to Life. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Sure that's not excessive? Sure that's not excessive delighting of the audience?
It is not excessive.
All right. A little bit of groovy music for you. Jimmy Akin, our guest, Open Forum. Cyrus in Virginia Beach, watching on Twitch. I think Twitch is starting to become something. Cyrus, we're glad to have you.
Cyrus meet Cyril.
Yeah. I've been here a few times. Twitch is just a live streaming site. It's like YouTube. So hey, I saw Jimmy Akin on, and I was like, wow, I have 3 questions I want to ask him, but I didn't write down any. So I went to the next one in queue, which is aliens.
Okay.
My question is, assuming we were able to colonize Mars, and we were able to find we colonized it, we established a space Jesuit mission, and we get a diocese installed, would we be able to convert some aliens? And assuming they took the vows, would they be able to become priests?
Okay, so we're talking intelligent aliens here, like Tars Tarkas or John Jones.
Yeah.
The answer is open theologically. So there's not a definite yes or no. My sense is that it would, assuming the aliens want to become Christians, that it would be possible to baptize them, given normal, assuming there's not anything about their biology that prevents that. Like if they're liquid helium aliens,
better not baptize them.
Don't baptize them because you're going to boil them alive.
Yeah.
But assuming they're able to live in a terrestrial environment like Martians would, then if they want to be baptized, it would be possible to baptize them and confirm them and so forth. It becomes a little more interesting when we get to the priesthood, though, because only a baptized male can be a priest.
So they got to be a dimorphic species, right?
Well, maybe. How do you know they don't have three, one of which is male? So there are some potential issues here. And the church would have to work those out.
Mm-hmm.
But the possibility is not either automatically excluded or automatically approved. It's something that would have to be worked out. Cyrus, if you'd like more information about the religious implications of intelligent alien life, go back and listen to episode 55 of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, which is all about aliens and religion. And we even cover things like, well, suppose you do have some liquid helium life forms that you can't baptize. What could you do with them? Well, you couldn't baptize them, but you could make holy water ice cubes and bless them with them.
Oh. Cyrus, is that answer satisfying to you?
Yeah, and give the guy in cues a raise. He took my question. No stuttering, no confusion, just professional. You want aliens? Sure, just let me throw you in a queue. Great work on his part.
He knows what's going to happen when Jimmy Akin's on. There's going to be alien questions because it's always aliens.
Of course.
Cyrus, you're a lot of fun. Thanks. Thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate it. I hope that was helpful to you. I personally, I don't know why this is.
Mm-hmm.
I have a visceral hope that there are no liquid helium aliens. And I don't know. It just seems too far away from us, I think. That exotic scares me.
Okay.
I'm scared by this. Hyper exotic.
Well, it is less likely than liquid water aliens like us. We're liquid. We're based on liquid water, and that enables us to be carbon based. And it is, even though there has been speculation about liquid hydrogen or helium aliens, you need in order to encode genetic information and run the machinery of a cell, you need something like carbon. Carbon is the best option on the periodic table at a wide range of temperatures. But you also need more than the carbon. You need a fluid that you can work with, and water works really well for that.
Yeah.
There have been speculations about, well, maybe we could do it based on helium, or maybe we could do it based on silicon, but it gets less likely. The carbon-water sweet spot is where you're most likely to get life.
Yeah. And by the way, John Jones, is that the Martian Manhunter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Which is the best superhero name.
Yeah,
Martian Manhunter. You can't beat that.
Yeah. His name is spelled like John with two N's,
right.
Jones with two Z's,
like
but it's pronounced John Jones.
Right. Because he's Martian, so you need to have apostrophes in your name.
Yeah.
All Martian names have apostrophes in them.
Well, and some like on Stargate, Teal'c has an apostrophe in his name, but it's a silent apostrophe.
Yeah, well.
You just say Teal'c, and there's nothing there corresponding to the apostrophe in the pronunciation.
But you just to be an alien,
it's
you really need an apostrophe.
It's like umlauts in a heavy metal band name.
That they don't mean anything.
Or they're sometimes called rock dots.
Yeah.
It's like, in linguistics, those actually mean something.
Yeah, right. Something that's very strange? The New Yorker uses umlauts in English. Did you know that?
For what?
I can't remember which letter they put the umlauts over. But for some reason, the New Yorker has this weird quirk where they use umlauts. I'll look it up maybe while you're talking to Wanda. Wanda in Omaha, Nebraska. No apostrophes in Wanda's name. Listening on KVSS Spirit Catholic Radio. Go ahead, Wanda, with your question.
Hi, Jimmy. My name is Wanda, and on Divine Mercy Sunday, I discovered that I believe I'm being remote neural monitored, and I believe it's a plan that the devil is going to use to take over the world.
Okay.
I believe it's being done via satellites. I believe human beings are involved. I believe intelligence agents are involved. I believe Luciferians are involved, and I also believe demons are involved.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this topic?
Yes, I am.
Do you have a question, Wanda, that you'd like to ask Jimmy?
Yeah. What can we do about it to bring this to the attention of the world?
Okay, well, I think the first thing that we want to do in any situation like this is be sure of our facts. And so you said that on Divine Mercy Sunday, you became aware that you were being remotely monitored in terms of your neurology, in terms of what's going on in your brain. How did you become aware of that? What suggested to you that you're being subject to remote neural monitoring?
I tape recorded what was going on in my home while I slept the night before.
Okay, and then what did you hear on the tape?
What sounded like people in a command center telling me, giving me commands and me obeying them.
Okay, so what did they command you to do?
Well, simply go to the bathroom.
Okay.
So I had been sleeping. I had been tape recording nothing. I live alone. I don't sleep with any of my electronics on. And you could hear my bell on my door jingle, because I have a bell on my door.
Right, I gotcha. I just want to, we have some limited time, and I want to do as much as I can here. I don't need all the detail, but so do you still have this tape recording?
I do.
Has anyone else heard it?
They have.
And did they hear the same thing on it that you heard?
They did.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting situation. I would be inclined to now. So, just to tell you where I'm coming from, I acknowledge that that technology can get to a point where it's possible to remotely monitor someone's neurology. I don't know that we have good ways of doing that without implants right now, because if you look at current brain monitoring technology like electroencephalograms, they require the presence of some kind of device on your head. And hypothetically, you could then get that information and uplink it through a satellite to somewhere else. And if this is being done to people without their consent, then it is, presumably as part of some intelligence project or something, then that would be bad. It would be immoral. I don't see any evidence in the Bible that would point to this playing a role in the end times. Like you mentioned the Antichrist and you mentioned demons and Luciferians. I'm open to hearing evidence for all of those, but I don't see any evidence initially for any of those things. And so I would have to be shown evidence to, support those views. What I'm saying is I wouldn't leap to those conclusions. I wouldn't leap to anything that I didn't have evidence for. I wouldn't just assume something. And I wouldn't assume it just because I've heard other people say it. If you go on the internet, there are people who will say any theory you want to hear. So you can't accept a theory just because you've heard it said or because it seems to in some way correspond to things that you've experienced. You need evidence for each additional claim that gets made. And I would be interested if you want to email me a recording or like an electronic file of this recording. You can email me at jimmy@catholic.com. That's JIMMY @catholic.com, and I can maybe take a listen to the file and see what I hear on it and get back to you. It is important to be aware that there can be a variety of different things that could produce the kinds of experiences you've had, and it's important to get them checked out. I would talk, for example, to your doctor about some of this. Maybe your doctor could look maybe take an X-ray or some other kind of image of your head and see does he see any monitoring devices that have been implanted there? Could there be another explanation? Sometimes people have had brain tumors that have caused them to have experiences like this. And if you've got a brain tumor, you want to find out about it so you can get treatment. There have been other causes as well. So before settling on the conclusion or on any single conclusion, I think it's important to check out all possibilities. And like I said, if you have this piece of objective evidence in the form of this recording, if you can send me that recording at jimmy@catholic.com, I'll be happy to listen to it and be of what further assistance I can.
Wanda, thank you very, very much. We have to go to a break. If you would like a copy of Jimmy Akin's book, The Words of Eternal Life, I would love to send it to you. It's entirely up to you. You can talk with Thomas and let him know if you'd like that book. And we look forward to hearing from you again. We've got to go take a break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin right after that.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Go forth and preach the good news. It's not just a suggestion. If you want to take more seriously the command of Jesus to share the gospel with those around you, consider joining St. Paul Street Evangelization. It's a grassroots organization that brings the Catholic faith to the streets in a non-confrontational way. Visit our website, www.streetevangelization.com, to learn more. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. It's time to do our part.
Wherever you are in the world, you can access the EWTN Global Catholic Network. It's everywhere. You can get EWTN's great Catholic programming on your car radio, at home on your TV, computer, or smart speaker. With EWTN's app, you can take EWTN everywhere on your phone or mobile device. If you want your news in print, turn to EWTN's paper of record, the National Catholic Register. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Tempest Fugitive again today. We're almost at the end, and we got lots of folks on the line, so we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. I believe EJ from Guam, listening on the Catholic Answers app, is up next. EJ, are you there with us?
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning or good afternoon.
Well, good morning to you, and I hope you've had your breakfast. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Yeah, I did. Good afternoon, Mr. Kellett and Mr. Akin. So my question is, I'm just trying to understand our Protestant brothers and sisters, why they say Peter is not the rock, the Petros, where Jesus built his church.
Okay, so actually a lot of them accept the fact that Peter is the rock that Jesus is talking about in Matthew 16:18. So we shouldn't characterize all Protestants as rejecting that, because a lot of them accept it. In particular, a lot of Protestant biblical scholars accept it because they've studied the passage. They recognize that, yeah, the evidence points to Jesus is at least in part talking about Peter here. Now, they may not then go on to conclude that Peter is the Pope or he has successors in that office, but a lot of them do acknowledge it. The reason that those who do not accept it can be explained in a number of different ways. On a personal level, well, that's what they've always been told. The ordinary people in the pew have always been told it's not Peter, and so they accept that, just like people in every communion tend to accept what their religious leaders tell them. And so that's why a lot of people don't, and they've never really studied it. They've never really given a lot of thought to it. They've just always heard this. When it comes to those who have studied it somewhat, a common argument that you hear is, well, there's a difference in the word that Jesus uses when he says you are Peter. He uses the word Petros, and then when he says and on this rock, he uses a slightly different word, which is Petra. And there is a difference in the form that the word takes, but this is one of the things that solid biblical scholarship has concluded, is that there's not a difference in meaning here. And the shift in the form of the word can be explained in more than one way. But if you want further information about that, EJ, I would suggest going to Catholic.com and typing in Petros, Petros, and Petra, Petra, and you'll have some resources pop up.
Okay, EJ?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. We always like getting a call from Guam. It's very nice of you to call. Appreciate that. And I hope you have the rest of your day goes very, very well, because it's Friday there, Jimmy. It's Friday in Guam. They're very prompt people. It's already Friday there. Dick in Peterson, Iowa, listening on EWTN. You are up next. Dick, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Okay, I was wondering, well, basically, what is the job or the purpose of my guardian angel? And what's the difference between a guardian angel and, like, an archangel?
Okay, so a guardian angel, as the name would suggest, is an angel whose job is to guard you. And in terms of how they do that, well, one of the things that Jesus mentions in the gospel is that the angels of little children, he says, never fail to see the face of my Father. And the way I take that, that means that these angels, these guardian angels of little children, have guaranteed access to the Father in heaven. So they can report to God what's going on with their charges and say, hey, the little boy or the little girl that I'm assigned to is in trouble. Here's the source of the trouble. What do you want me to do about it? And then God can give them instructions. And then guardian angels, their primary job is to protect us from spiritual dangers, but they can also protect us from physical dangers. And so their job isn't limited to one or the other. What's the difference between a guardian angel and an archangel? Well, there's some overlap in the categories. Now, the word archangel comes from a couple of Greek words. The first is arche, and the second is angelos. Angelos means messenger or angel, but what does arche mean? Well, arche is a word that means first or chief. And so that's like an archbishop is a chief bishop. He's a high-ranking bishop compared to just an ordinary bishop. And that's what the arch in archangel means as well. It means chief or high-ranking. So an archangel is a high-ranking angel. Is not an ordinary angel. He's a high-ranking one. Kind of like in the Army, a general officer is different than a private officer. Yeah. Privates are kind of ordinary in the military, but generals are high-ranking. That's kind of like what an archangel is compared to a regular angel. Now, are archangels sometimes guardian angels? Yeah, we've got evidence of that. We have evidence that Michael is an archangel, and we have evidence that Michael was the guardian angel of Israel, and he's also regarded as the guardian angel of the church. And so Michael seems to be someone who's both an archangel and a guardian angel for these big entities, like big important entities like Israel and the church. But an ordinary person, their guardian angel is probably an ordinary angel rather than a high-ranking one.
Dick, all that work for you?
Yeah, is my guardian angel working as hard for me as an adult?
As when you were a child?
As when I was a child,
Well, we shouldn't really worry about that. God gives your guardian angel whatever resources the angel needs to guard you. And so you can always count on God and your guardian angel to be on the lookout for you.
Dick, I'm going to say thanks. Going to try to keep moving, see if we can get everybody on before we have to go. We'll go to Mike in Dallas, Texas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Mike, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Good evening, gentlemen. So my question is about the Didache.
Okay.
I've been looking at it recently, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. But
yeah, you're doing fine.
It seems to me that there are very specific, consistent, and identical teachings that are in the Gospel and the New Testament. For just thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not, and it specifically mentions abortion and infanticide, and then
So you got to get to a
later
question,
talks
Mike.
about-
I'm sorry to rush you, but I just don't want to run out of time. So your question about the Didache?
Is how authoritative is this in the Catholic Church, and if it is at all, why don't we hear more about it?
The Didache is not part of the New Testament, and therefore it is not Scripture, and it is not authoritative. It also, even though it has some legal provisions in it, canon law has been modified since then, so it is not authoritative. What it is a very useful resource for learning about the early church, but it doesn't, and so it's very valued in that regard as a work that helps us learn about the early church, but it's not itself authoritative.
Okay.
It is good, though, isn't it, Mike?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
you can. I mean, it's probably the first pocket guide that
right. It is kind of a pocket guide to the faith, right? All right, thanks, Mike. I'm going to keep moving. Try to get everybody on. Christy in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. You are up next. Go ahead with your question, Christy.
Thank you very much. How can I get for my friend and I one rosary?
Well, you can often find rosaries in the vestibules of Catholic churches. Sometimes people leave them there, and you can pick them up that way. You could always go on Amazon.com and order a rosary, or you could go to rosaryarmy.com and get a rosary. You could even make your own. So there are a variety of ways to do it, but those are 3 just to get you started.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Sure.
Good evening. Thank you. God bless.
Oh, God
You
bless
too.
you.
Good evening to you too.
You're very, very welcome. And then I scared everybody else away. Scared all the other callers away.
I don't think you were. You're not that.
You don't think I'm that
I
threatening?
mean this in a good way. You're not that scary.
Okay, good.
In a good way.
I appreciate you. Well, what's the bad way of meaning you're not that scary?
You're not that scary.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's kind of insulting. Now I'm all mad.
Well, and I tried to avoid that, but you had to ask.
Well, now I'm scary because I'm mad. I do want to remind folks.
I won't contradict you on that point.
Store-wide sale going on right now, and I don't know how long it goes on, but they had it because they figure you're probably going to want to get that Christmas stuff ordered. You can do that at shop.catholic.com. Everything on sale. At least 10% off, some of it up to, I even heard about one thing, up to 75% off. Also, flat rate $5 shipping on everything you order. Shop.catholic.com.
And I've heard that it may be difficult to get stuff for Christmas. So, let's go to the Catholic Answers store and pick up some stuff for Christmas.
Yes, let's go, Jimmy. Let's do that. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World tomorrow. You got an exciting episode, but it's going to be
patron questions.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about all kinds of interesting
potpourri,
stuff.
A smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Is it smorgasbord or smorgasborg? I think it's board.
Smorgasbord.
A smorgasbord
because
would be like
they no, that's why it's called, because they have for smorgasbords they lay out a board, and on a table, and then they put the food on the board.
Oh, I guess I've never had it.
Uh-huh.
I guess I never had smorgasbord.
Okay. Well, they have, you could have a smorgasbord. You could go to Indonesia and have a Richtafel.
What's a Richtafel?
A rice table, which is a kind of similar concept.
Yeah.
And they can be so hot they give you vegetable neutralizer to eat along with it.
You mean hot, like spicy hot?
Yes.
Oh no, I can't do that. I am. Well, as you said before, I'm not scary. I'm also not hardy. I cannot do that spicy stuff.
Well, that's why they give you the alkali vegetable neutralizers.
Yeah. I was raised on boiled cabbage and corned beef.
Okay.
So that's about. And boy, is that corned beef spicy.
And they don't have a huge lot of spices in like UK, British Isles cooking. You know why?
Probably couldn't get them.
Because they're not near the equator.
Oh, yeah.
The cuisines that have lots of spice are closer to the equator, at least, or influenced by groups that are closer to the equator, because what the spices do in the food is kill parasites. And so if you're in a northern climate, you got fewer parasites. If you're in a hotter climate around the equator, you've got more parasites to deal with, and that's why we put spices in our food. We don't realize it, but that's the function they perform, other than tasting good.
Now, why am I not surprised at all that you know that? This is what British people say about food. Would you ever make a joke about British food? They always say this. They always go, Oh, it's gotten much better. Like,
well, they have curries now.
They acknowledge that at some point it was horrible. It's gotten much better. They never say, our food is great. Andrew, on the video, thanks for doing that. You did a very fine job, Andrew. And you got our little joke about Loki earlier. I appreciate that. Thomas on the phones, you were a superstar. You even got someone to say what a great job you're doing on the air, Thomas.
Yeah.
Nice work. And Brandon, of course, as always, very fine video work. Jimmy.
Nicely done.
I think we did a nice job, too.
I think so,
Good job, us.
Nicely done, Cy Keller.
Nicely done. Hey, tomorrow, the great Gary Machuda's here. We're going to talk about his new book about reality. See you then, God willing.